Hello, this is Dr. Jason Munsell. It is Thursday, uh, September 29th, about 4 o'clock, and I am in a little bit of a new location, and I wanted to talk about sex. Actually, I wanted to say a little bit more about that chapter on sexual language and politics. I enjoyed our conversation about the debate the other day, but I wanted to say a lot more about this particular chapter and highlight some things in the book that I think are really, really important. And as you recall, we've already looked at that particular ad that Clinton has out. But I will put a lot more articles on Koala Connection for you that you're not necessarily required to read. But if you, again, value your education, you probably ought to. Because there was a lot of very interesting things that came out in the news Tuesday and Wednesday, but mostly a lot of things Tuesday, reacting to the debate. So I'll put those things on Casey, and it all has to do with gender, and those are the two chapters that I want to sort of deal with today. Okay, so hope you can see this. Is it backwards? Probably. All about sex. So there are five things that Han is particularly interested in, and I mentioned this in class the other day. But one of the things that I think is really, really important to note, and there's a lot of stuff in this chapter, really, really interesting stuff. But it's important that you understand what the focus here really is. And this is what he says. This is on page 136. While it may also be true that nearly all social questions about sex are particular, our focus on language means that not all interactions between sex and politicians need to come under our analytical gaze. That is, we're not necessarily concerned with that type of stuff. We're concerned with sexual language. We need not to be concerned here with the sexual activities of presidents and presidential candidates, with who, if anybody, has slept with Donna Rice, or Monica Lewinsky, or FDR's nurse, or Dwight Eisenhower's Jeep driver, or his Jeep. We need not attempt to discover whether Thomas Jefferson had carnal knowledge of some of his female slaves, or whether the Republican chant about Grover Cleveland, "Ma, Ma, where's Pa?" going to the White House, "Ha, ha, ha," had any relationship to Cleveland's actual sexual history. Although these questions sometimes stir political talk, more important than the sexuality of politicians is sexual symbolism about politics. Sexual symbolism about politics. That's what this is all about. Ooh, you can see it. Yeah. Our interest is not a matter of idle curiosity or sexual titillation, but rather flows from the belief that gender-based discourse is basic in American political communication, and the manipulation of that discourse by political elites without corresponding understanding by the citizenry is dangerous. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what this is really all about. And then in light of that, some of the things that he is particularly interested in is the idea of language as a binary system, which I talked about the other night, sort of seeing things this way or that way, male or female, and then all masculinity or femininity. You know, the world is not black or white. The world is not rainy or sunny. The world is partly cloudy. The forecast is chilly today, hot tamale. Um, and he's interested in sexual metaphors. And there's really, God, there's so much interesting stuff in here. He's interested in the effects of political language on women and men. And in a lot of ways, it's about issues of gendered codes and gender norms. It's not just beauty, but it's also masculinity and the construction, in part, of like rape culture, invitation to war, and the violence, and the causes for language effects. Well, basically, I will do this my own way. So, and that's what I was talking about the other day. On Tuesday. So one of the things that we need to think about, again, is the whole binary way of looking at things. And we still have this. I mean, obviously, we live in a very, very sexist world, and the binary way of thinking about things generally is very, very problematic. And I don't make this more complicated than it is. It's just basically the idea that I mean, it is really complicated, but for you, just basically know the binary two things, right? But again, there is middle, 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 middle. The middle way. Not here, not here. I'm in my bedroom. Got my Casio keyboard that you can't see from the 80s. Got my guitar. Yeah. We're rocking and rolling. Okay. What was it? Yeah. Just the idea of either or. That's bad. And I'll let you. Well, we talked about this, and I'll let you read some of the stuff. But please know that that sort of binary way of thinking is something that has been ingrained in so many people, and oftentimes, I mean, it's hard not to think in terms of binaries, and so, or think in the world in that particular fashion. But we must beat back that beast. But I did talk about this the other night. Now, here's some extra research. It's not in the book per se, and I talked about this the other day. And actually, if you read some of the extra stuff that I'll put on KC for you, it references this stuff. A lot of this stuff is from Deb Tannen. But basically, the research, and again, in a lot of ways, this is very, very problematic because, in a way, it sustains sort of what we oftentimes think about how men and women communicate. But remember, we always take this stuff with a grain of salt. Same thing like with liberals and conservatives. I mean, you can't say, oh, liberals think this, all conservatives think this. The media tries to create that sort of polarization, but no. So women tend to think communication is about establishing a relationship. They try to create quality, so show support for others. They have conversational maintenance work, blah, 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 blah. Inclusivity through performance, blah, blah, blah. Concrete detail, tentative. Men tend to establish status through talk, use speeches to accomplish instrumental objectives, conversational command. They do most of the talking. Direct, assertive style, talk, communicate more abstractly, less emotionally responsive. Yeah. So basic things that I've already talked about in class the other day. So John Gray's an idiot. That's binary thinking. We ain't from different planets. And I also talked about metaphors that contain, oftentimes we see women in politics as either the pioneer, puppet, the hostess, beauty queen, or unruly woman / bitch, which is, again, very, very problematic. And the idea of them containing means that it's hard for women to get out of those containers. And we still see, I mean, a lot of people see Clinton as the unruly bitch. It's very unfortunate. I'll talk more about that later. And then I sort of stopped here, but I mean, it's we ran out of time. Oh, we did watch that, but the stuff on stalking, all that stuff is unbelievably important. There's so many different things in this that's really, really important. And in part, it's part of the metaphor stuff, but it's more stuff. So page 142 and 143, there are things that I think are particularly important. A paragraph on page 142. Metaphorically speaking, men are the primary aggressors in sexual relationships. Women may be stalked like animals. He preys on young women. He's a real animal. He can't keep his paws off of her. Notice how that's structuring both masculinity and femininity, men and women. Or hungered after like food. She's a real dish. She's a piece of meat. Hardee's commercials? Yeah. Women can be stroked, cranked, or turned on like finely tuned machines responding to the tinkering of the master mechanics. Women also may be won over or conquered, as in a game or a war. Men try to score. They want to get past first base, or if at all possible, make a home run. Certainly they don't want to strike out. Men want to be known for their conquests. And then, I mean, it's just all the stuff that Hans says is really, really interesting. On page 143, He says, sex as a manifestation of violence and anger, however, is not lost in our linguistic repertoire. The anger men seem to harbor towards women in the sexual realm and the purported passivity of women that simultaneously fuels and receives this anger have concrete sources. The confusion, frustration, and miscommunication that surround sexual identities and inform the expectations for intimacy for both sexes are rooted in the socialization process. This process has a powerful influence on the sex and gender role identities of both boys and girls, men and women. And the political effects of these culturally determined and metaphorically reinforced identities are also significant, with men in control of all realms that require power, strength, and force, and women relegated to realms more dainty, safe, and ultimately unimportant. Ah, so much stuff here. And I'll let you read a lot of this stuff. But one of the things, and then we already watched this commercial. One of the things that I wanted to show you, well, several things. I'm going to end this show. This is all screwed up. I can't see it. La 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 la. There's several different things that I found online, articles that I think can tie into all this stuff that Han talks about, particularly in Chapter 8. And I got it on my other course shell for my other class. I just need to put it on our class shell, so I will do that. But there's some really, really interesting things that I want to quickly show you. Here is an article that came out. When did it come out? Yeah, a couple of days ago. I think it was Tuesday before class, or maybe Wednesday. September 27th. So, yeah. So, basically, yeah, no. Oh, come on, get off me. Confirm station, yes. Okay. So, for many women, watching Trump interrupt Clinton 51 times was unnerving but familiar. So they sort of go into this thing about or this essay about all this stuff. Here is the sad thing, said Christian Emery, an author from Swansea, Illinois, is that I'm so used to men interrupting women, especially when they want to change the subject, that I didn't pay much attention to Trump's behavior. I was focused on Clinton and how she handled herself. Which is really interesting. Because, again, sexism and stuff like that, I mean, we are fish in water. Oftentimes we don't see it. So interruption. I'll let you read that. Another specific article on the first debate had this to say, and again, it's all linked to our course content. 4 ways, where is it? 4 ways gender played a role in the debate Monday night. Number 1, interruptions again? No, wrong, no, wrong. And you can read this stuff. Name power play. So Clinton sort of used this to her advantage. He called her Secretary Clinton. Is that okay? I want to make you happy. And she called him Donald. She should have called him Donnie. Stamina. Listen to this. Okay, this is really, really interesting. Where is it? Where are you? Ah. Where are you? Yeah, sorry. Basically, someplace in here. When it comes to talking about, where are you? Talk about that. No, I can't find it. Well, there's someplace in here in this particular chapter. There's something about these various words that we oftentimes use to stand for certain things. I'm just trying to find this thing. But I would argue that there is something sexual, can you even see me, about the word stamina. In lots of ways, and it does talk about this, it it's not just, well, it is in part about what is strong and what is weak, male strong, female weak, but there's so